Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that, we sift through mountains of information, pull out the really core stuff, and try to give you those mind-shifting insights.
That's the plan.
And today, oh boy, we're diving deep. We're looking into maybe one of the biggest questions there is. What is this feeling of self? And how does it tie into, happiness? And can we actually change our fundamental experience of life?
It's a huge topic, and our goal today really is to give you a kind of shortcut, a way to understand what it really means to be present, to be in your own mind moment by moment.
Yeah, but without all the dogma, right? No superstition.
Exactly. We're drawing on sources that bridge contemplative wisdom thing ancient practices with modern science, neuroscience, psychology.
So it's grounded. It's about what we can actually verify, what you can experience, not just believe.
Precisely. We want to explore what's empirically true about consciousness, about well-being, and importantly, give you practical ways to apply these ideas, things you can use, like today.
Because, let's be honest, we're all sort of playing this game, aren't we? Trying to find happiness, security, that feeling of just okayness.
Right, constantly looking for that next thing that'll make us feel satisfied now.
But what if the whole game is rigged? Or not rigged, but what if we're looking in the wrong place? What's the real point of all this searching?
And could it be that how we pay attention, how we manage our inner world, is actually the biggest factor in how good or bad our life feels?
It sounds almost too simple.
Yeah.
But mystics have said this for ages, and now science is starting to back it up, which is fascinating.
It really is.
Okay, let me kick things off with a story from our main source material. It really sets the scene. Picture this. The author is 16, and he signs up for this incredibly tough 23-day wilderness program. Colorado mountains.
Wow, intense.
Totally. We're talking lightning storms, plagues of mosquitoes, hiking hundreds of miles. And the final challenge, a 3-day solo fast, alone, by a lake.
Sounds kind of spiritual, right?
You'd think so. A recipe for deep insight. Well, not for him. Not at 16. He basically spent those 3 days obsessively listing all the food he wanted to eat when he got back. Like cheeseburger, milkshake, tuna melt.
Huh. Sounds about right for a teenager.
Yeah, he called it perfect misery. Just full of self-pity. And he was completely baffled because some older people on the same trip were calling it transformational, life-changing.
You just couldn't connect the dots. How could less pleasure equal more happiness?
Exactly. He had no concept back then that changing the quality of his mind could radically change his experience, regardless of the circumstances.
And that's such a key point, isn't it? Our inner state isn't just a reflection of what's happening outside. It's got its own potential, its own weather system.
Right. That story just hints at it. But then, fast forward a few years, he's 20.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a very different kind of experience. He takes MDMA, ecstasy,
Okay.
but not at a rave or anything. Quiet house, sitting with a close friend, just talking. He said their minds felt really clear, not fuzzy or distorted.
Interesting. So what happened?
Suddenly, he just knew with absolute certainty that he loved his friend. But it wasn't just like warm feelings. It was this profound insight.
Insight. How so?
He noticed that envy, feeling bad when your friend succeeds, it just vanished. He said it was like a symptom of mental illness that had vanished. His friend's happiness literally became his own happiness. They felt connected, indistinguishable.
Wow. That's more than just feeling good.
Way more. He described it as absolute sobriety, this feeling of moral and emotional clarity, like he was sane for the first time.
Sane. On MDMA, that's counterintuitive.
I know. But he meant clear-headed, ethically clear. And the love wasn't just personal. He realized it was impersonal, deeper than just their friendship history. If a stranger walked in, they'd be included in that love too.
Okay, so it wasn't just an overwhelming emotion. It was like understanding something fundamental.
Exactly. He called it a geometric proof, self-evident. And his friend apparently got the point at once. It was communicable.
That's incredible. And you can see how that would shift things.
Totally. Before that, he thought organized religion was basically, superstition, ancient ignorance.
Right.
But this experience, it made him think maybe those historical figures, Jesus, Buddha, Lao Tzu, all the saints and sages, maybe they weren't all epileptics, schizophrenics, or frauds. Maybe they tapped into something real about the human mind.
Something accessible.
Yes. And that's what this deep dive is about for you. Exploring what spirituality can mean now in a secular way, how it connects to science, and crucially, how you can actually use these insights in your everyday life, like right away.
That's the core mission. Direct, verifiable experiences. Insights available to anyone, whatever your beliefs or lack thereof. It's about understanding, not just blind faith.
Okay, let's unpack that word spirituality itself. Because, it pushes buttons for a lot of people. Skeptics, people hurt by religion.
Absolutely. It carries baggage. But our author uses terms like spiritual, mystical, contemplative, transcendent very specifically. He's talking about experiences you can have and methods you can use to investigate your mind, not dogma.
That distinction feels really important.
It's crucial because here's the thing. People from all backgrounds, different religions, no religion at all, report having similar kinds of self-transcending experiences.
You mean like feelings of awe or oneness or deep love?
Exactly. A Christian mystic might feel immense love, a Sufi mystic too, a Buddhist meditator, even an atheist having a profound moment looking at the stars. The experiences can be remarkably similar.
Okay.
But, and this is the key point, those experiences can't logically prove the specific doctrines of their particular religion, because those doctrines often contradict each other, right? Christian beliefs, Muslim beliefs, Hindu beliefs, they can't all be literally true at the same time.
Right. Logically incompatible.
So there must be something deeper going on, a universal principle about consciousness itself that gets interpreted through different cultural lenses.
And that deeper principle, according to the source, is kind of a bombshell.
It is. It's this. The feeling that we call I is an illusion.
Whoa. Okay.
Yep.
Unpack that. No, I.
Well, not in the way we usually think of it. There's no discrete self or ego living like a minotaur in the labyrinth of the brain. That constant feeling of being a little person inside your head, looking out.
Yeah, the driver in the skullmobile.
That feeling can be altered or entirely extinguished, and the claim is seeing through that illusion isn't just some weird mystical state, it's actually a clearer understanding of the way things are, supported by science and philosophy.
So spirituality here means what? Investigating that illusion.
Pretty much. Deepening the understanding that consciousness itself is fundamental and repeatedly cutting through the illusion of the self. It's an empirical claim. Look closely, investigate your own experience rigorously, and you can see the I isn't solid.
And the promise is happiness.
Wisdom.
Yes, the genuine wisdom and lasting happiness are available now, not just later. And these states, these ways of being, need to be understood scientifically through neuroscience and psychology, not just through ancient texts alone.
So the classic question, what replaces organized religion then, if we ditch the dogma? Well, the author gives this great nothing and everything answer. Nothing needs to replace the ludicrous and divisive doctrines, hellfire damnation, that kind of thing. Those are harmful fictions.
Okay, get rid of the bad stuff.
Right. But everything, in terms of the positive human experiences often associated with religion, love, compassion, moral goodness, self-transcendence, we absolutely need to talk about those. We need ways to cultivate them, understand them, talk about the full range of human experience, but as free of dogma as the best science already is. Keep the wisdom, lose the harmful beliefs.
That makes a lot of sense. Keep the baby, ditch the bathwater.
Exactly. And this is where Eastern traditions, especially Buddhism, become really interesting for science.
Why them specifically? More than, say, Christianity or Islam?
Well, think about Aldous Huxley's idea of a perennial philosophy, a supposed core truth shared by all religions. Kind of falls apart when you look closely. Abrahamic faiths are fundamentally dualistic.
Meaning God and creation are separate. Soul and God are separate.
Yes. And often faith-based, demanding belief in specific doctrines, sometimes punishing doubt. The relationship is often one of subject and ruler.
Okay, how are Eastern traditions different?
Many Eastern paths, like Buddhism or Advaita Vedanta, which literally means non-dualism, they explicitly transcend dualism. Consciousness itself is often seen as identical to the very reality that one might otherwise mistake for God. There's no fundamental separation.
And Buddhism, you said, is empirical.
Very much so. At its core, it's not primarily a faith-based religion like we think of it in the West. Its core teachings are practical instructions. If you do X, you will experience Y.
Like a science experiment for the mind.
Pretty much. The Buddha isn't a god. He's presented as an ordinary human being who figured out his own mind through practice. So the teachings are like lab manuals and explorer's logs, detailing methods and results for investigating consciousness.
Okay, so these aren't just Eastern ideas then. They're about the human mind, period.
Precisely. The insights are no more Eastern than the truths of Western science are Western. Gravity works the same everywhere, right? These principles of mind, the claim is, are universal. So the point for you, the listener, is to investigate these ideas for yourself. test them in your own experience, free from old metaphysical baggage.
It's about direct looking.
Direct looking. But just a really important safety note here.
Okay.
The kind of deep introspection we're talking about, looking closely at your mind, it's generally for adults who are psychologically stable. Like, intense physical training isn't for everyone. Deep self-examination can sometimes be destabilizing for people with certain mental health conditions.
Well, so if you have concerns, maybe talk to a professional first.
Absolutely. Consult a therapist or psychiatrist if you're unsure. The goal is well-being, not causing distress. Safety first.
Got it. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about time, or rather the present moment. The source says something really simple but profound. It is always now.
Sounds obvious, right? Like, duh.
Yeah, but really getting that, understanding its implications, is apparently crucial for happiness. Why is that?
Well, it connects directly to this Buddhist idea of dukkha, often translated as suffering, but it's more like unsatisfactoriness, a background hum of stress or dis-ease.
It's not just big dramatic suffering then.
No, not at all. The author describes watching people in a fancy Manhattan coffee shop, successful, attractive people, seemingly having it all. But he could see, subtle signs of stress, anxiety, dissatisfaction, even when things look good on the outside.
We're all carrying something.
Exactly. Even for the luckiest among us, life often feels difficult. And why? The source argues we are all prisoners of our thoughts. We're constantly lost in narratives, worries, plans.
And good stuff doesn't last, right? That's part of it.
That's a huge part. Pleasures are fleeting. You get the promotion. It feels great for a bit then. The baseline resets and the search goes on. This constant change makes lasting fulfillment impossible if you're always chasing the next external thing.
Which leads to that really deep question he poses.
Right. Is there a form of happiness beyond just getting what you want and avoiding what you don't? Can you be happy before anything good happens, in spite of difficulty, even amidst pain, sickness, death?
And most people live like the answer is no.
They do, but contemplative traditions suggest yes. And interestingly, these deeper forms of well-being, like love, gratitude, compassion, they're inherently ethical. They connect you to others, they don't isolate you.
Okay, so how do we access this, if not by chasing external things?
One key method is Vipassana meditation, often just called mindfulness now. And it's not spooky or religious, really. It's being studied extensively by scientists.
So what is mindfulness stripped down?
It's basically clear, non-judgmental, and undistracted attention to the contents of experience. So noticing thoughts, feelings, sensations as they arise without getting tangled up in them.
Not analyzing them.
No, not thinking about the experience, but experiencing more clearly, just observing, accepting what's there without needing to push away the bad or cling to the good.
And the main obstacle is just getting lost in thought.
Exactly. The big problem is thinking without knowing that we are thinking. Most of us are just daydreaming with our eyes closed when we try to sit quietly.
So mindfulness is like waking up from the daydream.
That's a great way to put it. Awaken from the dream of discursive thought. You start to see thoughts just appear and disappear, little puffs of smoke. And in the space between, what's left?
Awareness.
Consciousness itself. Open, clear. And like any skill learning guitar, learning to type it takes practice. Many thousands of repetitions.
But it becomes a habit.
It can. Mindfulness becomes a well-formed habit of attention. And the relief, the author says, is instantaneous, like waking up from a nightmare. It's a real learnable shift in how you experience things.
Okay, this is where it gets practical for daily life. The plumbing leak story.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. So his house springs a leak, water pouring down. His first reaction, pure rage like King Lear, just overwhelmed with frustration, anger.
Yeah, there.
Right. But then his wife says something simple. Be thankful it was fresh water and not sewage.
Good point.
And instantly, the rage just dissolved, replaced by relief, even gratitude. It's a classic looking on the bright side, but it shows how a simple shift in thought, in perspective, can totally change your emotional state.
And you can actually do this intentionally, like manufacture gratitude.
Yes, he suggests consciously thinking about all the terrible things that have not happened to you, or really considering how many people would gladly trade places with you, even on your worst day.
That reframes things pretty quickly.
It does, and studies actually back this up. Actively practicing gratitude increases one's feelings of well-being, motivation, and positive outlook. It's a simple, powerful tool you can use anytime.
Okay, another story, the rat in Kathmandu. This one really shows the power of thought.
It's so vivid. He's asleep, feels a scratch, instant terror, heart pounds, adrenaline floods his system.
Nightmare scenario.
Then, huge relief. Oh, it was only a dream. Calm returns. muscles relax.
Okay, false alarm.
But then he hears actual scurrying under the sheets, and boom, terror again, full-on panic.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So in seconds.
Exactly. His mind went from terror to relief, back to terror entirely on the wings of thought. The external reality, the possibility of a rat, didn't change that much, but his interpretation, his thoughts about it, created these huge emotional swings.
That really drives home how much our thoughts run the show.
Completely, and it shows why negative emotions often stick around longer than they need to. We keep them alive by thinking about them.
Like replaying an argument in your head.
Exactly. We actively produce the feeling of anger by ruminating, rehearsing insults, planning comebacks. If you stopped feeding it those thoughts, the anger itself would actually fade pretty quickly, maybe in just a few moments.
You know, that rings true. You can be furious, then the phone rings, it's your boss.
And instantly you drop the anger, right? You become calm, professional.
Yeah. And then you hang up and poof, the anger comes right back.
Right. But that moment of switching shows you can drop it. Those are genuine glimpses of freedom. You don't even need a distraction, like a phone call.
What do you do instead?
You can simply pay close attention to negative feelings themselves without judgment or resistance. Just observe them. Ask, what is this feeling? Where is it in my body? How is it changing moment to moment? What is aware of the feeling?
So you investigate it directly?
Yes. And the claim is, when you look at negative states this way, with detached curiosity, they often vanish all by themselves. They dissolve under awareness.
Okay, so this leads to the deeper point of meditation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beyond just managing emotions.
Yes. The really big insight is that the sense of self, that feeling of a thinker behind the thoughts, an experiencer having the experiences, that is the illusion.
The ego isn't a thing. It's a feeling generated by thought.
Precisely. Having an ego is what it feels like to be thinking without knowing that you were thinking. To glimpse freedom from that, you need to pay attention closely enough to see what consciousness is like between thoughts, before the next one arises.
And what's it like?
It does not feel like a self. It feels open, spacious, just aware, not like a little me inside.
Okay, if the I is an illusion, what are we then? Our common sense really doesn't help here, does it? We feel so solid.
Not at all. We know nothing directly about the billions of neurons firing in our brain, this soggy miracle of computation, yet it creates this whole experience of a world and a me in it.
And science throws curveballs at that feeling of unity, like the split brain research.
Oh, absolutely. That's profound stuff. Remember, for severe epilepsy, they sometimes cut the corpus callosum, the connection between the brain's two hemispheres.
Right. And the patient seemed normal afterwards.
In everyday life, often remarkably so. But in experiments, Roger Sperry's work showed astonishing functional independence. Each hemisphere can have separate memories, intentions, maybe even separate streams of conscious experience.
Two minds in one head.
It certainly looks that way sometimes. The left brain, usually the language side, might say one thing, while the right brain, controlling the licked hand, might express something completely different. Like the patient whose left brain said draftsman, but right brain spelled out racing driver.
Wow. So much for a single indivisible self.
Exactly. It poses a huge problem for the notion that each of us has a single indivisible self. It suggests consciousness itself is more fundamental and divisible, whereas the self we feel is maybe more of a construct.
And the implication. If I had that surgery, I would be speaking from my left brain, totally unaware of the conscious experience potentially happening in the right.
That's the chilling implication. The point of view from which you are consciously reading these words may not be the only conscious point of view in your brain. It really challenges who you are.
Mind blown. And it's not just surgery, right? Our brains are always doing stuff unconsciously.
Constantly. William James talked about trying to remember a forgotten name, that feeling of it being on the tip of your tongue, knowing wrong names are wrong, but the right one won't surface.
Yeah, that gap where something is clearly happening.
Exactly. James said it shows the unconscious mind exists, and our conscious experience hints at its activity. We have these older automatic systems running alongside our conscious, deliberate thinking.
And we're influenced by stuff we don't even notice. Subliminal things.
All the time. Studies show words flash too quickly to see consciously can still affect your responses, your choices, even trigger emotional centers like the amygdala without you knowing why. Clearly, we are not aware of all the information that influences us.
Even learning and memory. Like those amnesia patients who can learn new skills, like golf.
Without any conscious memory of ever having learned it. They get better each day, but swear they've never played before. It shows learning can happen without conscious recall. And that applies to us too. You know what a door is, but you don't remember learning it.
Right. It's just known.
So the takeaway is consciousness is vital. It's where meaning and morality live, but it's built on this vast ocean of unconscious processing that shapes everything. We're just seeing the waves on the surface.
So back to the main question. What is this feeling of an I, if it's not a solid thing?
Most of us feel it, right? A center of consciousness, behind the eyes, inside the head.
Yeah.
It defines our point of view.
Yeah, it feels like ground zero.
But the argument is that feeling is itself a product of thought. It's another feeling that arises within consciousness. Consciousness is the space. The I feeling is just one object appearing in that space.
So consciousness is primary. It witnesses the I feeling.
That's the idea. Consciousness is, prior to it, a mere witness of it, and therefore free of it in principle. Like the screen is free of the movie playing on it.
It reminds me of the optic blind spot analogy. It's right there, but we don't see it unless we look for it specifically.
Exactly. The selflessness of consciousness is in plain view in every present moment, and yet it remains difficult to see. It takes a specific kind of attention, a technique, to notice it because our habits constantly reinforce the feeling of I.
And this I feeling is different from other weird mental states, right? Like amnesia.
Totally. Someone with amnesia forgets their past, but there's still an I having the experience of being confused and forgetful. The subjective center remains.
Or out-of-body experiences, even if you feel like you're floating above your body.
It's still you having the experience. The sense of being a self and observer is still there, just seemingly displaced.
Even those weird rubber hand illusions, where you feel a fake hand is yours.
Right, or body-swapping illusions. They show how flexible our sense of body ownership is, but the feeling of being the experiencer usually stays intact. They mess with the content of experience, but not necessarily the subjective center.
Okay, what about how we relate to other people? Theory of mind, knowing others have minds.
Crucial for social life. We infer intentions, beliefs, but maybe even more basic is that feeling when someone looks at you, that primitive impression that another creature is aware of us.
Sartre's voyeur hearing footsteps behind him.
Yeah.
That sudden jolt of self-consciousness.
Exactly, that feeling of being seen. And here's that exercise the author suggests for you. Go somewhere public, pick someone, and just stare at their face until they look back.
Oh, that sounds awkward.
It is. But notice what makes it awkward. What's that feeling that floods you when eye contact happens? The source calls it a magnification of the feeling that we call I. It suggests self-consciousness and knowing others are conscious are deeply linked.
Maybe even using the same brain circuits, like mirror neurons.
Possibly. Mirror neurons fire when we act and when we see someone else act. It hints that our understanding of self and other might be intertwined at a very deep level.
And then there's the voice in the head, the constant chatter.
Yeah, the running monologue. We talk to ourselves. Why? Why live in relationship to ourselves rather than merely as ourselves? That internal conversation seems key to maintaining the illusion of a separate self.
So the core claim is, look closely and the self dissolves.
It's an empirical claim. Look closely enough, and you will discover that the self is an illusion. Like the rope mistaken for a snake.
The fear is real, but the snake isn't. Closer look reveals the rope.
And the snake collapses into being a rope, not the other way around. The illusion vanishes under scrutiny. Or that white square illusion, you see it, but look for the edges, and they disappear. It's imposed by your brain.
The self is like that.
Right.
Generated, but not solid.
That's the argument. It's there, but we're actively overlooking its illusory nature.
Which brings us to Douglas Harding and having no head.
Right. Inspired by Mach's drawing from his own perspective, Harding had this experience of just looking and realizing from his direct view there was just the world, his shirt, terminating upwards in absolutely nothing whatsoever, certainly not in a head.
It sounds totally bizarre.
Conceptually, yes, but empirically. He's describing the raw data of perception before the concept "I have a head right here" is added.
And we can try this. How?
Yeah, try it now. Look around. And just gently try to turn your attention towards where you believe your head is. What do you actually see there? Just the world, right? You don't see your own face.
Only world. No head in my visual field.
Exactly. Or just imagine having no head. Don't strain. It's right on the surface of consciousness. You might glimpse it immediately or not at all. It's a quick shift in perspective.
Like the window in the mirror. You can see through it or see your reflection, but not both at once.
Perfect analogy. It's Extraordinarily easy to shift back and forth between seeing the world window and feeling the self-reflection, but impossible to truly focus on both simultaneously. That's why this selflessness, though always present, is so easy to miss. We get stuck in the reflection.
Okay, this feels like it connects to Dzogchen, taking the goal as the path.
Yes, exactly. Instead of striving to reach a future state of selflessness, gradualism, Dzogchen emphasizes recognizing the freedom that's already here. Sudden realization. Consciousness is already free of anything that remotely resembles a self.
Like Ramana Maharshi finding the I absent when he looked for it.
Right, that intense self-inquiry. He looked for the self that feared death and found nothing solid. It vanished when sought.
And Tulku Urgyen's pointing out instruction, showing the author he had no self to transcend.
Yes. The practice becomes recognizing the intrinsic selflessness of awareness in every moment. You don't achieve freedom, you practice from the freedom that's already the nature of awareness.
But it's easy to get deluded, right? The Swiss woman's story.
Oh, that's classic. She thought she hadn't had thoughts for a week, felt enlightened, radiantly happy.
Sounds good.
Until Tulku Urgyen gently asked, "How long since you were last lost in thought?" She said, "A week." Then a pause. Okay. That could have been a thought there. Her enlightenment collapsed in seconds.
Because she was just thinking about being thought-free.
Exactly. Thinking about what is beyond thought is still thinking. She was identifying with the concept of enlightenment, not actually resting in thought-free awareness.
So glimpsing selflessness is just the start.
Only the beginning. The real work is to remain committed to waking up from the dream of the self, moment after moment. It's ongoing.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, if we're exploring these deep states, what about teachers, gurus? This feels like tricky territory.
Extremely tricky and potentially dangerous. The source is very clear about the pitfalls of the guru-disciple relationship.
Like exploitation.
Absolutely. Gurus can leverage students' desire for progress, for approval, emotionally, financially, or sexually. Bad behavior can get rationalized as a teaching.
The crazy wisdom defense.
Right, like that Zen story of cutting off a finger. But modern examples often seem far more crazy than wise, just covering the guru's own issues.
There's some pretty shocking examples in the source material. Gurdjieff, Osho.
Yeah, exploiting followers' labor, and Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche ordering assaults, punching students. It's disturbing.
And his successor spreading HIV because he thought crazy wisdom protected him. That's horrifying.
It's a catastrophic failure of ethics. What you see in someone like Trungpa, the source suggests, is a mind impressively free of shame, which can be good if you're also ethical. But shame often keeps us from behaving like wild animals. Believing you're beyond mistakes is incredibly dangerous.
It relates to that feeling of inner radiance too, doesn't it? The guru's gaze.
Yes. We feel like we see consciousness in someone's eyes. But it's mostly facial cues, not literal light. And gurus often use intense eye contact.
It can be genuine or manipulative.
Exactly. It can be presence or an intrusive affectation, even dominance. Psychopaths are known for great eye contact.
The author even tried it himself. Became a nuisance.
He did, gazing into everyone's eyes. He said it showed him the path that many spiritual imposters have taken, how easily that intense gaze creates a powerful, potentially manipulative connection.
But there's an exercise here too. Eye contact meditation.
Yes, try it with a partner or friend. Just sit and hold each other's gaze. Ignore the awkwardness, the urge to laugh or talk.
What happens?
When you get past the resistance, the source suggests the absence of self-consciousness can be especially vivid. The internal chatter about me and you can drop away.
So the bottom line with teachers is, be careful.
Cavi emptor, buyer beware. Bad teachers discredit themselves, not the whole idea of guidance. Look for red flags. Weird histories, obsession with numbers, prophecy, magic claims. Real enlightenment, if it were supernatural, should be easy to verify scientifically. Raise the bar for proof. Trust your gut and rational inquiry.
Okay. What about the edge of life? Near-death experiences. People see tunnels, lights, loved ones, proof of an afterlife.
It's compelling, absolutely. Many believe NDEs prove consciousness survives the brain.
But the scientific view is more skeptical.
It is. First, NDEs aren't universal. They vary by culture. Hindus see Hindu figures, Christians see Christian figures. If it were one objective realm, you'd expect more consistency.
Good point.
Second, Only maybe 10–20% of people near death report anything. And crucially, most NDEs happen when the brain isn't fully offline, or if it was, activity must return for them to report it. You can't prove the experience happened during total brain silence.
What about famous cases like Pam Reynolds seeing surgery details while brain dead?
That case has issues. The events she saw likely happened before or after the period of deepest brain inactivity. Plus, potential experimenter bias from the researcher. Memory is reconstructive, not a perfect recording.
And even Alexander's proof of heaven, the neurosurgeon's NDE.
Also heavily critiqued. His proof of an inactive cortex was flawed. CT scans don't show activity, and medical records showed he wasn't brain dead, just in a coma. His visions also sound a lot like psychedelic trips, which he denies having.
So the feeling can be incredibly real, like the author's dream about his llama.
Exactly. Felt totally real, veridical, but was likely the brain creatively reconstructing memories. We need more proof for extraordinary claims about consciousness leaving the brain, not less. The brain itself is capable of generating incredible experiences.
Okay, this leads naturally to psychedelics. The source says something bold. Everything we do is for the purpose of altering consciousness.
Think about it. Coffee, music, relationships, food. We're always trying to shift our conscious state towards something preferable.
And psychedelics are just a very direct way to do that.
Extremely direct. Remember the author's MDMA experience? That opened the door. And research from the 50s, now resuming, shows potential for psilocybin, LSD in treating depression, addiction, end-of-life anxiety.
Despite the war on drugs.
Which the author calls a moral failure. He argues strongly for the fundamental right to peacefully steward the contents of one's own consciousness.
He even says he'd wonder if his daughters hadn't tried a psychedelic at least once as adults. That's quite a statement.
It shows how impactful these experiences can be for some, but he's very clear about the risks.
Right, indispensable tools for some, but dangerous.
Exactly. If you are lucky, you will know what it is to be enlightened. If you are unlucky, you will know what it is to be clinically insane. Huge potential upside, huge potential downside. Use caution, respect, the right setting.
What about that idea of the brain as a filter and psychedelics opening it? Or the brain as a radio receiver for consciousness?
The source critiques the radio idea. If the brain just received consciousness, damaging it shouldn't reduce consciousness. But severe brain damage clearly does. The filter idea is more plausible. The brain normally restricts input. Psychedelics throw open the gates. But that doesn't prove the signal is coming from outside. It could just be unleashing the brain's own latent potential, which can include psychosis.
And DMT is especially weird, with the elves and aliens.
Yeah, very potent, short-acting, naturally occurring. The consistency of those specific entity reports is strange and unexplained. Is it tapping some hidden reality or just a consistent pattern the human brain generates under DMT's influence? We don't know.
So taking psychedelics is like a rocket without guidance.
That's the metaphor. Can be sublime, egoless connection. Can be terrifying psychosis. And critically, the ecstasy itself is ethically neutral.
Like the Mayans using psychedelics while practicing human sacrifice, transcendence doesn't automatically make you good.
Exactly. The kind of insight that does link to ethics and well-being needs to be cultivated in ordinary waking life through attention and practice.
But psychedelics can still be valuable.
William James said they forbid a premature closing of our accounts with reality. They show that normal waking consciousness is just one way the mind can be.
So valuable for some to show what's possible.
That seems to be the conclusion. They can convince you profound change is possible. After that, it seems wise to use safer methods like mindfulness that don't carry the same risks. Find a path without strapping yourself to the rocket.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway for you, the listener?
I think it's that there's a genuine middle path. You don't have to choose between rigid religion and having no spiritual life, no inner depth at all.
It starts with just paying attention. Reverence for the ordinary.
Beautifully put. Spirituality begins with a reverence for the ordinary that can lead us to insights and experiences that are anything but ordinary. The human mind is incredibly profound. Just noticing what it's like to be you right now is a doorway.
And that core idea. However numerous your faults, something in you at this moment is pristine, and only you can recognize it. That's empowering.
Deeply. Because that conventional self, the I, with all its stories and faults, it's a transitory appearance. It vanishes when looked for.
You don't need to be a meditation master to start seeing this.
Not at all. It's about recognizing the nature of thoughts, seeing them as thoughts, and beginning to awaken from the dream of being merely ourselves. waking up from that constant internal narrator.
And this helps others too. It's not just navel-gazing.
No, because seeing through the illusion of separation naturally fosters compassion. When the I becomes less solid, the you feels closer. You become better able to contribute to the well-being of others.
So a final thought to leave people with.
Maybe this. Consider that the biggest transformation isn't about adding anything, more beliefs, more experiences. It's about removing what isn't actually there, that persistent, limiting illusion of a separate self.
What would life feel like if you could just perceive reality directly, without the filter of me?
Exactly. And the journey isn't about reaching some endpoint. It's about continually waking up again and again to the freedom and clarity that's already here in this present moment of consciousness. It's always available.